get ready. All right, good evening, everyone. Mayor Loop is at the Washington County Board of Commissioner meeting this evening, so I will call this Tiger City Council business meeting to order. Deputy City Recorder Raimondo, would you please conduct a roll call?
Councillor Shaw.
Here.
Councillor Singh.
Here.
Councillor Wolf.
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Youth Councillor Vogel.
Here.
And Mayor Loop is absent at the County Commissioner meeting.
Thank you. So everybody, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, city staff and council members, do you have any non-agenda business?
None from us, Council President.
All right, thank you. So next agenda item is public comments. So the calling number is 503-966-4101. Again, it's 503-966-4101. And those wishing to comment should call now to get into the queue. And anyone wanting to comment should also sign up on the comment form in the back of the room. So first item is follow-up to previous public comments, and we have Assistant City Manager Nyland to report on follow-up to public comment. Good evening.
Good evening, City Council. So at last week's council meeting, we had two people provide public comment, one written and one in person. The written comment was about a proposed resolution restricting the sale of flavored tobacco. The constituent did receive a response and was also informed that you would be discussing this item at tonight's meeting. The in-person commenter spoke about his support for the proclamation around climate action and urged council to keep doing more around climate change. We will continue with our proactive communication, letting community know how they can stay informed and get more involved. That is my update for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Nyland. So next item up is Tiger Area of Chambers update, and we will have Board of Director Chair Tom Edgo here. Welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right? Just going to hit a few of the highlights from the update. Leadership Tigard had the Nonprofit and Human Needs Day recently, visiting Family Promise and Just Compassion, two partners I'm sure you're all very, very aware of. Just a quick update on our Public Affairs Committee. It's going to be meeting on December 21st. Scholarship Program, March 2024, going to be awarded, opening for applications in January. So if you know of anyone who might be a very good candidate, please pass the word. The Sustainability Fund for Small Business, mid-January 2024 is what we're looking at launching that for. Some other key things just on the calendar. Last Good Morning Tigard is actually this Thursday. And that's going to be at the Great Greek in Tigard. Have not been there. Got to check that out. Council President, thank you for joining the ribbon cutting. That was very nice. Anytime, I am reminded sometimes, because I can't make all of these things, that people notice when people on the board show up. They notice if any of you can make it too, and I realize you have other obligations as well, but thank you. It actually does get noticed. The Farmers Market, 33rd season coming up, and hope to have some more sponsorships set up for that as well. Other key dates, just to make you aware, Speed Networking, again, fun event. Bolorama, which made me just go, we're doing what? The first time I joined the chamber? but it's actually a lot of fun. And if you ever want to get a team together, even if you absolutely stink at bowling, it's absolutely fun. And Shining Stars, May 10th at the Embassy Suites. Last thing I want to leave you with are just two brief stories of kindness and generosity, true stories. Dennis Johnson owns Center Street Gold and Silver. About twice a year, he does a fundraiser for a charity, and the most recent one he did was With Love, which supports foster kids who are basically going through a really scary time and going into foster home. And what I wasn't aware of until someone taught me is that oftentimes these kids, with what they have, they show up with a garbage bag and all their stuff's in it. And what this organization does, amongst other things, is gives them school supplies and maybe a backpack or a suitcase so they can show up in a scary place with a little bit of dignity. Dennis went out of his way to raise over $10,000 by not only being generous himself, but also encouraging other business members to be generous and his customers to be generous. So if you get a chance to go past that store, I would just encourage you, knock on the door, say hi, and tell him thanks. And if you have a Dennis in your life that maybe is doing something big or small, I'd encourage you to do that too. Last thing is Steve D'Angelo of D'Angelo's Catering. This is a true story as much as you might think it's not. This is the story of Turkzilla. This happened to me when I committed to a farm-raised turkey sight unseen and did not know how big it was going to be until I picked it up, and it was 28 pounds. I had never seen a 28-pound turkey in my life. I had to get a friend to put it in his freezer because when I measured it, it was 36 inches around at the biggest point. As I was coming up with plans for what to do with this, I realized I didn't have a pan for this. And then by the time I saw how much a pan was going to cost, I realized that pan would not fit in my oven. So I called Steve D'Angelo up and just said, Steve, can I borrow a pan? I think he's got to have something. I was just running out of options here. He just said, we can probably do this for you. I'm like, really? Huge burden off my shoulders. So took the bird in. He was very happy with it. By the way, the person who raised this bird has a holistic health clinic in the Hillsborough area, so if you have any athletes in your home that maybe need some performance assistance or just natural whatever, she'd probably be pretty good at helping out the wrestler or football player in your family. So Steve helped us out, and not only did we have this 28-pound bird sliced, ready to go, and everyone got a lot of leftovers, we literally got a gallon of gravy off this thing. So the point of this story is, beyond Steve D'Angelo being, a really kind and generous person helping me out, next time you are having a holiday dilemma, I encourage you to call Steve and give him the bird. That is all I got.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for sharing those heartwarming stories. Council, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Shaw.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Engel. I'm excited to hear about the Tigard Small Business Sustainability Fund starting in January. I think that was a great partnership between the city and the chamber, so yay. And then also, as you may have seen, we have a resolution that's going to be on our council agenda tonight in support of ending the sale of flavored tobacco products. And I was curious if you'd heard from any of your businesses or if the chamber has or is planning on taking a position on this.
I have not heard directly from these businesses, but I have had an experience with this topic about a year ago when I sat on the Government Affairs Committee for the Washington County Chamber. And what was interesting about that was there were the regular crowd of us who were always interested in politics, but then there were about 5 different convenience store owners. And then there was the American Cancer Society person. And what I found interesting was the Cancer Society person was making a very passionate plea for protecting the kids, which I understand, very high ground type of posture. The convenience store people were coming from the perspective of distribution. They're like, you are isolating this in this county and you're giving us, 2 or 3 months notice that you're going to do this. And they started talking about what the financial impact was going to be, which a lot of us didn't see coming. It was literally, hey, I have a store on this side of the street, which is in this county, and the other one in Multnomah County. People were talking about losing business to the tune of 50+% because you have commuters coming through. They were looking to get their cigarettes or their flavored products, and they pick up a bunch of other things as well. So the financial impact for some of this stuff was really, it was forecast, and I think it started to be a real issue as some of these business owners were talking about what was going on. And, you know, unfortunately, everyone can have a disagreement, but the two sides were talking past each other quite a bit. One was talking about distribution and unexpected financial impacts, and the other one was trying to claim the moral high ground, and it's just more complex than that. If this were going to go to the legislature, this is my personal opinion, I can't speak for the chamber on this. If it were at a statewide level, that would probably take away some of the sharp edges for this when you don't have a city or a county boundary driving business just across the border. But I would, it's not as clean cut as you'd think, and I just encourage you to really poke on this one to see if there are any unintended consequences, because I was surprised how much there were.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much. All right, so next item on our agenda is the Tiger High School Envoy. And today we'll have our own youth counselor, Vogel, to provide a report.
Yeah, thank you. So lots going on at Tigard High School in these last few weeks. First of all, we have an upcoming break coming up from December 18th through January 1st. Looking forward to that. I know the student body is. Our leadership class as a whole has been working on bonding as well as creating new events for the rest of the year, looking at the next little bit of the semester as well as looking through the second semester. Talking about sports, we have had a very successful winter sports season so far. Girls basketball had a great home win on December 2nd, as well as they had their first away game against Liberty on December 5th. Boys basketball has also been doing great, and we've had an amazing student section turnout. Our wrestling team had a match at Lincoln High School, and they did amazing, as well as our first home swim match was held. Dance team has also been doing very well and has competed at 3 competitions, placing very high with their palm and contemporary routines. Talking about service, on November 25th, Service Club held a tree lighting for a tree lighting for elderly homes. I'm not quite sure. Sorry, Julie wrote this. And then on December 4th, our National Honor Society held a blood drive with Red Cross, which we ended up with 57 students and staff to donate, which is super exciting. We had 57 units of blood donated. Throughout November 24th through the 17th of December, Service Club is partnering with Holiday Express to help spread holiday spirit to the Tiger community. It's a great opportunity for our Service Club students to get involved and gain volunteer hours, as well as our Future Business Leaders of America Club started their annual giving tree, where youth gifts are given through ornaments, and this can get both our staff and our students the opportunity to give back. We have many ongoing services going on, and we look forward to bring that into the new year. For the arts, the past 2 weeks, our theater has been putting on The Book of Will, a very successful play. It has gone amazing, and many students and staff were able to go and give great reviews. It was said to be an emotional roller coaster, and the audience was very involved. And on December 13th, Tigard Choir will be performing at home for the holiday concert. Please come and watch if you would like, and that is the update.
Thank you, Youth Counselor Vogel. Any questions? All right, thank you so much. All right, so next item up is Police Chief and Police Department update. And we have Chief McAlpine and Commander McDonald who will provide an update. Welcome.
Good evening, Council President and Council. Again, Chief McAlpine for the record, and I've asked incoming Interim Chief McDonald to join me, mostly as symbolic. I've just asked him to accompany me today, so he's gracious to let me do most of the talking as my last report out to you. But I want to take a moment just to kind of reflect where this concept was born from. When I was hired, I had asked then City Manager Wine if I could meet with the council on a monthly basis, present crime statistics and other things that I thought were relevant, because not only did I want to be accountable to the city manager, but also to you and the community as to exactly what is happening on a month-to-month basis. And so this has actually been a labor of love for me to be able to share the highs and the lows, and then sprinkle in any things that I think that all of you in our community want to be aware of. And so I just thank you for always having this monthly opportunity to be in front of all of you. A couple things, this is a kind of a potpourri I have for you tonight. But first, this is 1 month left of the year, so how are we tracking? The nice thing is, at the end of the year, you're seeing mostly green. And so we're about 17% of last year on overall persons crime, and 7% on property crimes. We also know we're obviously going into the holiday season. And unfortunately, we're going to see thefts are up a bit already, so we'll see what happens. But we do try and create awareness for those about remembering in shopping sprees, don't leave everything in your car, leaving things unattended, things of that nature. They may not even be able to see in your car, but they're going to take the percentage and possibly risk versus reward. So we'll be sure to kind of remind people on our social media platforms. So just to see where we're trending, and then Commander McDonald will bring it to you and close out the end of the year in January to see did we at least trickle down. Our calls for service, we're about 700 less, about 3%. And so again, I anticipate that we'll end the year, less calls for service, which is a nice thing. And then, were you able to, I was going to ask Commander McDonald we just did a news release on one incident. Again, when we talk about what's happening out there, creating that awareness. So I'm going to ask Commander to talk a little bit about that call.
Sure. Good evening, Council. You'll see a news release that we did just this afternoon on an incident that occurred over the weekend where actually 2 of our patrol cars got damaged pretty significantly. And the suspect in this, I'll say, was highly motivated to get away from us. The officers responded to a welfare check call down at the south end of the city, Durham and 99 in the shopping complex down there. And when they responded, they found 2 people inside a vehicle. One of the officers recognized one of these people as being a wanted person, and they engaged them. The driver decided he wanted to get away and rammed 2 of our patrol cars multiple times and then sped off. We chased for a little bit, but then we stopped because it was just going to be way too dangerous for the community. Ultimately, we caught both of the individuals, and they both ended up in jail. One of them was armed at the time that the officers took her into custody, and the other person is, well, they're both known to us, but the driver is someone that our officers are very aware of, and we've had several run-ins. But those are the types of things where an officer goes to. They're going there on a welfare check, not knowing what to expect. And I actually would give kudos to our officers for the restraint that they had and the professionalism they had during that. And then the fact that we ended up finding both of these individuals with canine tracks within a couple of hours. And it was one of those types of events that could have gone many different ways. And ultimately it was due to the training and the professionalism of our officers, and then the cooperation of other agencies around the area, Sherwood, King City, the sheriff's office, that allowed us to get these people into custody. It's a pretty interesting case, and the video is rather shocking to watch. So we're working on getting that released so that the community can see some of the challenges that we face when we're, going up on something kind of unexpectedly.
Thank you. And going into kudos, so today we were able to do our end of the year awards and recognize, we selected 2 officers of the year. I think there will be no surprise to any of you. That was Officer Brian Orth, and then Officer Canine Handler Evan Fury. As we know, Officer Orth is in the downtown corridor, but the start of the year, he's out in patrol, he's handling all the calls. He had his sixth 6th life-saving award during this year, as I think it was well publicized in his CPR events, but also how he approached the downtown project with compassion, getting to know the business owners, their concerns, but also our unhoused. He knows them, everybody by name, works with, compassionately to try and resolve the issues. And I think we would all agree right now he set that bar very high. And so I was very honored to recognize the work that he's done. And then with Evan Ferry, his is just, he's a canine handler. He's had 14 captures plus numerous article searches, very well respected out in the region and in the county. But he also, what he brings to our table, our officers are fairly young on Graveyard. He's really taken on a leadership mentor role. He also has a lead in a lot of our training. And just, he's that quiet leader that is very humble. And so we had an opportunity to recognize him as well. For our Supervisor of the Year, it's our Traffic Sergeant, Travis Dowdy. We have asked him to do a lot. So he's not the one that may be, in the forefront, but he has traffic, photo enforcement, a traffic unit when there is nobody, and he's still having to answer the complaints and whatnot. He has taken on the fact that when we're short on sergeants and patrol, he will step in. We're going to be short when I leave, and everybody, we don't want to elevate a sergeant because we're short in patrol, so he's coming back to the road to handle that. So he's a team player that just models what you want in a first-line supervisor, and he's currently, we pulled him from Tigard Leadership today to recognize him. So I told him, do you have to make up? Do I need to give a note from class? He goes, we were covering all of our service providers. I think I know them. We're good to go. And last is our support staff of the year. Again, no surprise, Maddie Bauer, our community engagement. She hosted over 100 events, just short of, I think her count was 8,000 participants. Her ability to connect, her desire to continue the branding and humanizing of the badge. I think her, pinnacle event was our open house with over 800. I think that most of you got to see, and really just appreciated her energy. Officers have a hard time turning her down and saying no when she needs some help, and we were honored to recognize her as well. And with that, I'm going to close with the mayor. As you are all aware, I think she shared with you, she got a chance to do some testimony last Monday in front of the legislator regarding ballot measure 110, whether or not the status of decriminalizing our hardcore drugs. That day, I was in the work group with the same legislative group having that round table, and I just wanted to share with you those discussions. Again, as you've seen, the comprehensive approach that all of law enforcement, so this is, and we're talking about your DAs, your probation, parole, all of that, the things that we say, and first and foremost, I want to make it very clear, we are not thinking, hey, bring it all back to us, we'll criminalize it all again and we'll solve the problem. Not at all. We're saying if you do, what does that look like? If it goes to a class A misdemeanor, these are the things that we can do that give us a little bit of teeth, that put a little bit over somebody's head to get them help. A lot of talk about multiple expunging, multiple times to be successful, because we know that not everybody's successful the first time around. But what can we do when the other half of our public is demanding that we do something? So I had an opportunity to share some of our thoughts. Those are that 11-point comprehensive. So again, we're asking for sobering centers, treatment centers. We want that money to go to treatments before we just get handed our role, but we do have a role. We do see what's out there and how we can be part of the solution, not one or the other. But I just wanted to, I think it's a good segue when Sheriff Massey gets in here and talks about their capabilities. A Class A misdemeanor, where would that fall in their capabilities on good days and bad days? But again, I don't want to give anybody the illusion that we're trying to advocate wrestling our way out of it. We did hear from the ACLU and Unite Oregon on trauma-informed, some of the concerns they had. And so I think the legislature is wanting to have smaller working groups, try and figure this out, and we're just there at the table to say what our capabilities are, what we can and cannot do as it is currently structured. But it's not an either or. And as I've told our leadership team today, there's a component, should it move forward, talking about, there may be code changes for how you get residential treatment centers in our cities. So things to look at, because I think if anything goes through the legislature in this short session, it's going to be ballot measure 110. So with that, I know that's quite, one more other happy thing. Again, you got to note, January 2nd, so I don't get this one, we hired Joseph Wanley. He is a lateral from Corvallis, although he took a break. And in between, he did some amazing things. Currently, he's a chaplain at Linfield University, helping students. But he was also the wellness director for the Muslim Education Trust. So you can see, and he owns his own Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so he's quite capable and competent. He speaks, reads, and writes Arabic, and comes with a level of maturity. I think that he will only further enhance our department, and we look forward to onboarding him on January 2nd. So we are down to 3 more. Once I vacate, 4. But we have other people in the pipeline, but we'll keep, moving forward. 60-person academy, the first one is going on now. And so they're under evaluation. So hopefully we'll be able to report back to you on, because the legislature wants to know, are there increased safety hazards? Is there things that are dropping off? Because we certainly don't want that. So it'll be heavily evaluated. We do have 1 officer in that academy. And then we'll have 1 that will join February 29th in the next academy. So a lot to digest, but happy for either one of us to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Chief and Commander, Councilor Wolf.
Just a quick comment. Chief, I just wanted to circle back at the very beginning when you talked about when you started your leadership role here and really wanting to provide the dashboard. I had an opportunity last week to present and talk about our public safety services, and had a follow-up about, what's the city's transparency, and do we really know what's happening within our force? And it was with tremendous pride and expediency that I could go to our website and I could send those links and share your monthly reports, share what Brian does on a weekly basis. And I think not only took that questioning, but really then turned it to a compliment to say, just really impressed with what's happening in the city of Tigard and what we do to share what's happening in our community. And so just want to thank you for that vision, that leadership, and that understanding of what people want to see from their police force. So I just appreciate that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Chief. I just want to quickly say that I'm still in denial of your departure. And, all this officer and staff of the year, you mentioned their quality of compassion, respect, and being out in the community and transparency. To be honest, I see that all in you. So I don't want to get emotional, but thank you so much for your leadership. And
if it's any consolation, I'm in denial too. And if you looked at my office, you would see that you wouldn't have any indication that I really am, a few days short of all this. So I too am trying to hold it together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for leading by example. Thank you so much.
It is my honor. Thank you.
You're not gone yet, but hopefully we'll see you again soon. So.
Definitely.
Councilor Shaw.
I just want to mention your champion of accountability and professionalism. It comes across in all your staff, and last night I attended a community meeting and received 2 compliments of the staff. Both Commander McDonald, you mentioned this incident that occurred that could have gone wrong in a lot of ways, and a couple of the community members were very pleased with how it turned out. They had seen some of the what was happening in the impact, so kudos there. And then also Officer Orth's name came up yet again, and that people were pleased just about his outreach to the downtown businesses, but also to those who are impacted by being houseless and homeless. So just kudos to both of you, and really thrilled as well to echo both President Hu's comments and Councilor Wolf's comments. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next item on our agenda is public comment. So we have one person sign up for public comment and one person for agenda number 6. So let's go with the public comment. We have Daniel Thompson. Daniel? So today we have the timer working right now, and you have 3 minutes. So when the timer turns yellow, that means you have 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, there's an issue last time, but, so I would like to address a disturbing trend that I've been seeing. All too often, people have come before council presenting statistics that are skewed and slanted towards whatever motive the presenter is trying to push. I know the council cannot be experts in all areas, but there have been too many times these numbers have been, excuse me, misrepresented in order for certain agendas to be pushed past the council. Since I only have a couple of minutes, I'll only present what I consider the most egregious example. Twice the statistics for the photo camera system have been presented before council, most recently on October 24th. The crash statistics report slide that was presented claimed to compare apples to apples by the officer, showing 2016 to 19 compared to 2020 to 23 when the camera system was turned on. What is not mentioned is this break also coincides with the pre-pandemic and pandemic traffic patterns. I want to say that I'm not opposed to a red light photo camera system. I think the red light photo camera system does bring some value. What I am opposed to is the blatant misrepresentation of facts and data. When the council commented how the photo camera system seemed to have reduced crash data all along the Pacific Highway corridor, I observed the officer cringe slightly. This told me that he knew the data reduction was not entirely due to the photo camera system, that COVID and the reduced traffic from that played an equal or greater part. But that didn't fit in his agenda, so he wasn't going to correct council. I'm disappointed in the police for falsely reporting this statistic and not clarifying the important fact and letting council proceed under a false assumption. I would ask that council be a bit more careful when reviewing the data presented so as to not get swept into false narratives. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Anybody here want to comment for agenda item later, right? So, okay. All right, so Deputy Recorder Raimondo, have we received any written comments?
Not at this time, Council President.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we go into phone-in or video comments. Network Administrator Vang, do we have anybody waiting in the queue?
There are no callers in the queue.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's move on to City Manager report, and City Manager Reimer will give an update.
Thank you, Council President, members of the council, members of the community, and my teammates. Just a few things to report. A couple of our community development teammates just walked in for an upcoming agenda item, but I also want to report that a group of them had our third community get-together on Monday night. It's reported that we had about 40 attendees participating in engaging conversations with all of our team to understand what's going on in the community. We continue to learn from these events. I think we learn and the community learns at the same time. And we have our next get-together that will be scheduled sometime in February. So we're continuing, as we always talk about how we're engaging our community. Not only are we asking them to come to meetings like this, but we're trying to be in the community as well. So thanks to them for their efforts in that. Excited to talk about a project that is currently on display at the library. This is a project that was led by TTSD at Tigard-Tualatin School District, elementary school students, to fingerprint artwork. There's almost 3,000 kids that participated in that. So if you go to the library, you can see it, and it's, as the libraries report, it's pretty fun and amazing just to see the creativity and artistic expression of our youth in that display. Because the break is coming up, as our youth counselor talked about, there's many things happening at our library during the 2-week break. We'll have story time, other things that are offered for kids and family. One that intrigues me is the self-directed search for Pete the Cat. So if you ever read Pete the Cat books, we have that going on. And then creative exploration with a make-a-thing. So many other things happening as well. We also, in our recreation area on Monday, started our snowman scavenger hunt at Cook Park. So just once again, trying to find ways to provide opportunities for our families and youth and others to enjoy what Tigard has to offer. On that front, special kudos again to our stormwater team. We've talked about updates on our leaf disposal collection as well as our food drive that we've had. 4 different events. We're in the process now of pulling all the data together so we know exactly how much we collected in both the food and the leaves, and we'll be presenting that in your newsletter coming up this week. But thanks to our stormwater team, public works team for really making that happen year in and year out. Just a couple other things. As you've seen, now that we have our second phase of Main Street done, we've also installed lights on that side, so now we have the lights going up and down Main from the first phase and the second phase. So thanks to our streets crew, economic development team for pulling that together on an annual basis. And the last thing for now is this Thursday we're going to have a multi-department meeting with ODOT to discuss the upcoming Hull Bridge closure in 2024. So we'll keep you informed. We'll keep the community informed. ODOT does a good job sharing that information, but obviously that's going to be a disruptive factor to our community. So we're having a meeting this week to make sure that we're all coordinated on what this is going to look like, what it's going to mean for emergency personnel, et cetera. And that concludes my remarks tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor, any questions, comments? I was walking my dog yesterday on Faneuil Creek Trail, and I saw posters for the first time for community development upcoming meeting. So yeah, it's great. It's the words are getting out there. So great. Thank you. All right, so I was just informed by our deputy city recorder that our public comment for agenda number 6 can go forward right now. So Rebecca, would you like to come? Thank you.
The first thing I want to say is I'm excited about Officer Worth being the officer of the year, but I'm not so excited about.
Can you turn on your? Yeah, go ahead.
So no, as I say, I'm not so excited about Chief McAlpine leaving, no. So some mixed feelings there. So today I just wanted to, I know I did a lot of written testimony, and I kind of wanted to follow up on that a little bit. And first share a quick personal story, and I promise it's a short one. About 10 years ago, my eldest daughter did not ask for a new car or anything extravagant for her 18th birthday. All she wanted was for me to quit smoking. That's what she asked for. She knew how detrimental it was to my health. She was determined to make me quit smoking one way or the other. And her school curriculum, marketing campaigns, and the fact that her grandfather suffered from lung cancer was really how she learned the damage that can be done by a smoker. So at this point, I've been a smoker for about 20 years, but I gave her what she wanted for her birthday, and August 3rd of 2013 was my official quit date. I did that with smoking cessation classes as well as support from my family and friends. So skipping ahead to the point, I believe that her generation and the generations following are really great examples of how well we have worked to not only stop underage smoking and vaping, but also how we've stopped creating adults that smoke and vape as well. And you can see this is backed by the CDC studies showing that underage cigarette use is down from 16% to 12%, and e-cigarette usage is down from 14 to 10%. And I hope to see that continue to decline. As I stated in my written testimony, my concern by banning flavored vape will open another black market that we cannot regulate. I believe that allowing the FDA to continue to regulate the importing of vape products and regulating American vape companies, similar to what has been done with marijuana, cigarettes, alcohol over the years, is the best course of action at this time. Otherwise, I strongly believe that we will see some bootlegging and potentially some youth and adults attempting to make their own, which can be lethal. I can go online right now and purchase everything I need off of Amazon and thousands of other sites to make my own vape. There's like refillable mod pens, and essentially vape is vegetable glycerin, flavoring, and liquid nicotine. 50 milligrams, from my understanding, 50 milligrams of liquid nicotine is enough to kill a 150-pound person. So I couldn't imagine, whether it be youth or adults, purchasing that stuff online, making it at home, possibly selling it to their friends in high school or what have you, and them creating the wrong dosage with that liquid nicotine because it's as simple as a dropper, as a little tincture dropper. So again, I feel that the regulation is key for the industry, and we already have restrictions on manufacturers and distributors and retailers. And there's also laws on the books when it comes to possession of nicotine products by our youth. I don't know how well those are enforced, but there is an ORS 167.85 that it's unlawful for a person of 21 years of age to possess tobacco products. Kind of in closing, I mean, I wanted to say from a personal standpoint, I understand that our first priority is to protect our children. But in this case, I think, for lack of a better term, that there are two sides to every story. And on my side, I see that there is a chance that this could actually do more harm than good. So I hope I gave you another side of the story in addition to my probably pretty lengthy written testimony. So thank you.
Thank you. And before we go on to the next item, I just been reminded again by our Deputy City Recorder that I need to ask Network Administrator Vang if we have any video testimony.
Nobody signed up for a video testimony.
Okay, thank you. Apologize for that. This is only my second time running city council meeting, so. Okay, so next item, we'll receive an update from Washington County Sheriff Massey. So the sheriff will present the update. So welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you.
If you just turn on the microphone, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. This is Jail Commander David Marzilli. He'll present with us. Oh, and thank you for bringing that up on the screen. All right. Can you switch to slide for me, please? All right, so what we're going to talk about, we'll go through our current situation a bit, staffing, what our current adult in custody population looks like now as compared to 10 or more years ago, the services that we are required to perform, and then the services that we choose to perform in addition to that. And then we'll end with decisions, recommendations, and what we think it will look like for recovery. Next slide, please. Okay, how did we get here? It's actually been a bit of a long road. We didn't get here overnight, and so what I want to lead with is we're also not going to be able to solve this overnight. COVID-19 had a significant impact on our staffing. Our jail deputies were required, jail deputies and our civilian staff were required to wear their masks for over 2 years. Because the jail was considered a congregate care facility, which it is, when other folks were able to come out of wearing masks after a year or a little bit longer, our staff were still required to do that. Combined with the fact that we have a more labor-intensive adult in custody, higher mental health incidents, significantly higher substance use disorder, so the work was much more difficult. And during regular times, our sentenced to pre-sentenced adult in custody was about 50%, 50%. As a result of COVID, that went to about 80-20, 80% unsentenced, because we weren't the only place that was experiencing issues in the criminal justice system, right? So people weren't able to get to court. fewer in-person appearances, and so people waited in jail longer. And those things really were significant impacts to our staffing. People realized during that season that there was such thing as remote work. And what a wonderful thing to do, work remotely as opposed to inside a jail dealing with adults in custody. Another impact was that our advertising budget that we had in before 22-23 was cut. And so we were just relying on word of mouth and things like that to show people what an honorable career this was. Fortunately, that has been reinstated, but while it was cut, we saw our applications drop significantly. Let's see, applicants to backgrounds dropped about 62%, which is significant. As of now, are these deputy vacancies current?
Those are
42?
correct, yes.
We have 42 jail deputy vacancies. I think when I was working in the jail 8 years ago, we had 4 to 8. So just for some context. We have our adults in custody, and I know I mentioned this, but it's worth restating. They are so much higher need now than they used to be. The incidence of methamphetamine use has increased the mental health issues in addition to the mental health issues that exist everywhere in our community. Because we have fewer beds, the just sort of overall population that our deputies are dealing with are more difficult, they're more addicted, they have a higher need from the day they come in until the day they leave than they used to. Next slide, please. So this gives us an idea of what our budgeted jail deputy and corporal positions should look like. We are budgeted for 140 positions. The Board of Commissioners has not decreased the number that we're budgeted for. We just are having a hard time filling them. So we have 98 filled positions. 22 of those 98 are not housing. So we also run security at the courthouse. We have a transports and extraditions unit. We have someone assigned as a full-time jail investigator. So those are just deputies that are doing other services. They're just as important, but they're not assigned to the housing. And then we have the 76 that are assigned to our jail housing. Currently, we have 4 recruits in training and 2 that are on extended leave. So those are things like FMLA, OFLA, baby leave, things like that. So what that leaves is 70 of our 140 budgeted positions. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll talk a little bit about the inner workings of the jail, the staffing, how it works, how we evaluate the staffing that we have. And so these slides are a little bit data intensive, so if you have questions about it, go ahead and ask, but I'll start off on the left side. We currently run 3 10-hour shifts per day, day, swings, and graveyard. Each of those shifts, and there's a typo on here, it should be day shift has 15, swing shifts has 15, and graveyard has 12. That's a minimum number of deputies that we need to run a shift in the jail. We don't have extra. Each position is a required position that we have in the jail. And so we take the 70 deputies that are available to work and we just divide that up amongst the 3 shifts to give us the best coverage that we can for the staffing. And so that's the breakdown in the middle. On average is on the right side of that table, and that's on average 16 on days, 14.3 on swings, and 9.7 on graves. So that means before anybody has taken time off on vacation, we have guaranteed vacation before they're calling in sick, before they're on leave. We don't start out above the minimum. The best we have is on day shift, and that's 0. On any given day, we have people calling in sick. We have people out on, we have to have mandatory training. We have them out on vacation and that kind of thing. So for a 24-hour period, all those shifts add up to 42, and that will be key on the next slide. So we have 42 posts in the jail that's required to run the jail over a 24-hour time period. The grayed out sections are pods that we already have closed, so we reduced the number of deputies needed to run the operation by that many. Next slide, please. This, again, is a pretty data-intensive slide, but it's one that we look at to evaluate how we're doing shift coverage-wise. On the bottom, those numbers are the number of hours we need per month to run the jail. So basically, if you look at November 23rd, we take 42 posts for a 24-hour period times 10. That's 42 10-hour shifts. That's 420. Then we multiply that by the days in the month. And so 31 days in November equals 12,600 is the minimum hours required to run the jail. So if we have everybody show up and they all have a post, we have that covered. On the top section, those bars on there, the important one is the top bar, the blue one on the screen. That is the correlation of the number down below. So 12,600 November, we need 12,600 hours covered in the jail to run optimally. The bottom line red is how many staff we actually have that shows up to shift on any given day due to the staffing shortages, vacations, training, sick time. The difference between the blue, the top bar, and the bottom bar is what we have to make up to run the jail. And what that means is that red circle in the bottom is 4.4 deputies on average we're short per shift. So 4.4 for swing shift, graveyard, and day shift. And so we make that up. We make that up either through voluntary overtime. Deputies sign up to work the overtime. We force overtime, so we'll call a deputy in early or we'll hold them over late to try to make up that distance. And as you can see, the pink line is what we get. Once we forced everybody over that we could and everyone that we've had voluntarily come in, that's the line that we have. Ideally, you want those lines to match and overlap, but they don't. And so then we have to start shutting down posts. And what that means is we may have one deputy cover 2 posts. So we may have one deputy cover 2 pods where they do the rounds for the AICs. The AICs are then locked in their cell, and the deputy does hourly rounds on 2 pods. The work in the jail doesn't go away just because we don't have a deputy there to work it. They have to, if we have to close a post, that just means there's not a deputy to staff it, and somebody else has to take up that work or share it amongst other ones. And so that's kind of what we look at when we're trying to see how our overtime's working and where we're at and evaluating what the impact will be from closing pods, how it affects the total operation of the jail. Next slide, please. One of the things that Sheriff Massey talked about was the retention and the vacancies. And 8 years ago, we might have 4 or 5 have been fully staffed, and now we're at 42. The table on the left, the recruit deputies, talks about hires and losses and the percentage of retention. When somebody, and that's through the FTEP process, the Field Training Evaluation Program, from day 1 till they're signed off with the coach and able to work 100% as a deputy, that's our FTEP process. And so you generally lose a certain percentage of recruits through the FTEP process. That's what it's meant to do, to train, evaluate them, and find out if someone is not able to perform. If they're not able to perform after coaching and maybe unplugging them for some special training, then they've failed the FTEP program. Back in 2019, we had an 85% retention. Now, 2023 year to date, it's a 65% retention. And so our recruitment numbers are lower, and also our retention numbers are lower as well. The good thing about the jail is that we have non-certified positions as well. And so if we have a good employee who wants to be certified to work as a jail deputy, and they may not make it through FTEP, but they're otherwise a good employee, we have the option of then transferring them to a non-certified, a jail services tech position, JST, where they can run our master control, which is like our dispatch center for the jail, or do some of the booking processes, our property room. And so the good news is that we can retain them, we can move them to a non-certified position and keep them employed at the sheriff's office, and we still maintain that investment in them. even better news is sometimes they just need some extra time learning and getting experience in the job, and then we can move them back to the certified position. And then on the right table is our operational gains and losses and the turnover rate of just all deputies and corporals that we have on a year to date. And as you can see, again, our turnover rate has kind of gone up and down, but it's over the past, since 2019, 2020, it's slowly crept up to 25.7% now. Next slide, please. This is another important slide for us when we're evaluating when I'm evaluating with my team how the jail is operating. And we look at how many hours posts are shut down. And so these are not all 42 of the posts, but these are the major posts in the jail that we look at. And most of those are pods. A pod is an area where 62 AICs live and stay inside the jail. And we're a direct supervision jail that's meant to have the AICs out of their cells as often as they can, with a deputy actually working in the pod with them at a desk. It allows us to have better interaction with AICs, to better identify problems that might be going on with them, to make sure that they stay safer and not victimized by other AICs. And it's generally a lower stress environment for the AICs. I think to a certain extent it's probably higher stress for the deputies because they're out with the AICs, but it does allow for a better working relationship with the folks that we care for. And again, it just generally is better all around. The stress level's low. What happens when a pod gets closed? It's not vacated, it's just closed in the sense that the AICs are now put in their cells, and the jail's not meant to have them in the cells that often, but that's unfortunately what we have to do. And so we track those hours. The more hours we have, the worse it is. And so as you can see, if you look at that table on the far right, the total hours per month starting January 2023, they have slowly crept up. And in June and July was a very high number for us. One of the counselors had a question about why that was, and it was kind of a perfect storm of a bunch of different things. We had staff that were out on vacation. It was summertime. People were taking vacations. We had training. We had folks that were sick. We had some injured staff in training. So that perfect mix kind of occurred where we just didn't have the people to operate the jail the way it was meant to be operated. There's a lot of things that have to do that Sheriff Massey will talk about in a few minutes. Those things are not getting done to the level that we're comfortable with, or it's being shared amongst deputies. And so that's when we looked at it and decided that we had to start doing some things, changing some things so that we can get that closed hours down to a manageable level. So we started working on closing first one pod, then evaluating how that was working and deciding that we had to close what is a third pod. During that time, we also implemented double overtime. And so anybody who's working in the jail for housing, rather than getting paid time and a half, gets paid double overtime. That incentivizes people to voluntarily work for overtime. It also incentivizes our patrol division to come in and help out in the jail and work overtime as well. We started that at the end of August, and you can see the immediate impact that it had on the number of pod lockdowns due to low staffing that we had. The problem the challenge with having patrol deputies work in the jail is they're not trained, they're not jail certified. There's a limited number of things they can do. They can work in our booking area where all the new custodies come in. They can help fingerprint them, photograph them, search them, get them dressed in. They can help do rover duties, which is, go to different parts of the jail to help out. Let's say we have to escort an AIC from one pod to another. They can help out with that. But the lion's share of the work, it has to be a jail certified deputy to do that. And they can't. So they help, and it does. It is an immense help, and it's helped take the pressure off, but it doesn't solve the problem. The other thing that we also did was instituted some booking criteria restrictions. We changed from taking we stopped taking misdemeanor property crimes and just stuck to misdemeanor persons crimes and all felony crimes. And initially it was all warrants, and then we still were having an influx coming in that wasn't allowing us to organically lower the population, so we further restricted booking to taking only warrants related to persons crimes, misdemeanor or felony crimes as well. And that has helped some too. It's helped reduce the pressure at the front door with bookings coming in, and it's helped us slowly lower the population in the jail without having to resort to just force releasing a bunch of people. So it kind of metered it down a little bit. Next slide, please. Sheriff Massey talked about the pre-sentence population that we have in the jail. It was 50-50. The sheriff quoted a number of 80% pre-sentence, 20% sentenced. That's actually even lower now. We have 12% sentenced on our latest number. That's exceptionally low. Pre-sentenced AICs have a higher workload associated with them. One, because they're new to the jail system, and so they're acclimating to the jail setting, they're detoxing, they're struggling with being confined. They also have to go to court more often, which requires deputies to transport them from the jail to the courthouse, or to have a cell side trial. We can do, in certain cases, video hearings with the AICs at the cell side, but most of the judges prefer to have them in person. And so they're more labor intensive to have those pre-sentence AICs in there. We are contracting with another jail to house a certain number, 15 AICs, but having only 12% sentence, we're limited on what we can do, because if we sent someone pre-sentenced to a different jail and they have a hearing, we still have to drive them back and forth and transport them back to the jail. And so any savings that we'd have on personnel, we're kind of burning that savings up by driving back and forth. And so we try to send sentenced folks there, or people who might have a high-level crime that has a longer court process, so they're not having those quick court visits. And so that's the point of this, is to show that we have this high number of pre-sentence AICs in the jail that increase the workload of a very busy jail already with a shrinking employee population. So the two lines are going the wrong way. Next slide, please. Use of force incidents in the jail. As you can see, it's kind of slowly increased since about 2015 when COVID hit. It sort of spiked and then dropped off. One of the reasons for that was COVID let it drop off. We had less people coming in. We had pretty significant booking restrictions, more restrictive than we have now. And it was, people were separated, and so they weren't interacting so much. It started to go up a little bit more, and I asked our analyst what she thought that was. And generally, it seems to be, although we don't specifically track why use of force is happening, she attributes it to the jail reopening again and our bookings increasing. Even though with our restrictions, we're still having a higher number of bookings come in, and a lot of our use of force incidents occur in the booking area. People come in, they're intoxicated, they may be under the influence of something, they're emotionally worked up, and so when they come in the jail, it just generally has more use of force incidents with them. And so the increase coming through the door has resulted in increased use of force, and also the general population that we have. Like the sheriff said, we have a high number of folks that have mental health needs. We're not a mental health treatment facility. We're a jail. We have mental health workers on staff. But I was talking to one of our JSTs just a couple days ago when we were doing a tour, and she reiterated to the tour folks that before it was mostly disciplinary issues. People just were acting out and didn't want to follow the rules. Now it's more mental health related issues, and there are some sick folks in the jail that need help, and unfortunately in the jail they decompensate, even though we try the best to take care of them. That's just kind of what happens, and that's one of the reasons why those use of force increases. Next slide, please. And I think what you'll see through all this is the work in the jail is increasing every year because of the type of folks that we have in there. Detox is the same kind of thing. We have a lot of folks that come in that are under the influence of drugs, under the influence of alcohol, and they get put on detox watch. We have to keep an eye on them and check on them more often, more frequently as they go through their detox, because they're medically fragile at that point, and you can die from going through detox. And so it's a higher workload on our staff and a higher workload on our medical personnel as well to make sure that these folks are getting the medical treatment that they need and getting checks that they need so that something bad doesn't happen to them. That increases the number of work that we have there. When our jail staffing was originally designed, it was designed off of the posts. We have 42 posts, we need 42 people, 1 deputy per each post. Now we need to move to a workload model, and we're working on doing that. There are some posts that require 2 or 3 deputies. Our intake pod, where all the new custodies come in that are lodged, they're going through this detox. They're going through mental health checks. They're going through court. And before 1 deputy would handle that whole thing, it takes multiple deputies now to do that level of work. Detox is just another one of those examples of what goes on. Yes.
One thing I would like to add to that is you see where the line is trending up on those detox, but it looks like it's also coming down, right? So the downward trend for those detox checks is simply due to the fact that we have fewer people coming into custody now because we've restricted our booking criteria. But the rate of detox AICs coming in continues to trend upward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next slide, please. For anyone not familiar with the word cloud, the bigger fonts in the bold are our tasks that occur most often or we are doing frequently throughout the day over and over. And the yellow is important because it highlights those tasks that are often delayed or taking longer to complete due to staffing. And they're really our highest liability tasks as well. So you'll see that medication pass, professional visits, we have so few sentenced adults in custody that the ones that we do have in custody are needing to meet with their attorneys regularly. They're actually needing more support from their family and their friends in visiting there. Medical escorts and our out time for our adults in custody and our staff lunch and breaks. I mean, they are getting postponed and pushed out, and they're working more overtime shifts throughout a week, which just has to contribute to the overall wellness and sort of energy for people to continue to do this work. Another highlighted portion is our force releases. It's really important that we not also send people out into the community who are dangerous. And so when we're looking at who we can get out of custody because we don't have room for them, we're looking to be the least violent, the least risk of those adult in custodies. But every day we're having to look through it and figure out who we can send out next. Next slide. My responsibilities are to maintain a fully functioning jail for the safety of all of our communities. We need to be able to adequately respond to emergencies. Our deputies need to know that they are going to have backup if they need it, and there are going to be people there to respond. We have federal and state mandated responsibilities that we have to get done. People must meet with their attorneys. And another issue that we're having is even once adult in custodies maybe get into court and they determine that they need to be reviewed whether or not they're fit to proceed, getting down to the Oregon State Hospital has presented some significant challenges because it probably won't surprise you all, but they are dealing with the same issues that we are with staffing and availability of beds because the number of adults in custody experiencing mental health crisis has risen significantly, and we just don't have the facilities or structures to support it. We need to find a way to maintain a more sustainable workload for our staff, and that is why when the commander talked about sort of right-sizing our jail for the staff that we have, that was really part of our motivation. Staff are getting burned out and leaving at a rate we've never experienced before, and they're not getting an opportunity to take discretionary days off, spend time with their families. Next slide, please. So Commander Marzilli touched on this as well, so I won't reiterate everything that he said, but we have decreased our booking criteria significantly. Now, I do want you to know that there are always exceptions. So, as an example, if someone is in Tigard and they commit a theft of under $1,000 and they receive a citation instead of going to jail, and an hour later that Tigard officer encounters them again for having stolen something else, they can call up and talk to the sergeant in booking and say, hey, this is the situation. I need to get this person out of the community right now and put a barrier between them and here, at least for some time. And then we'll accept that. And we'll get them into, at the very least, we can get them in, get them through the booking process, get them removed from the situation they were in, or maybe the people that they were spending time with, and get them a release agreement, which gives us a little bit more accountability because they're not able to, per that release agreement, return to that location. And hopefully those are ways that we can mitigate it when someone takes advantage of the fact that because of our reduced booking criteria, they're not going to go to jail. And let's be clear, they know. I mean, it probably took a day or two before people who were prone to committing crimes told their friends that they weren't going to go to jail. I just want you to know that there are some options for that. Next slide, please. Decisions and recommendations. So, what did we do? We reduced AIC capacity to align with our available staff. We've done that. We are renting beds at Yamhill County. We've done that. We're also exploring renting beds at another county. However, it really needs to be that sentenced population so that we're not constantly moving back and forth. Recruitment. We have reinstated our marketing budget. We have hired additional background investigators. Our marketing specialist, we anticipate that we will see sort of what benefits might come with that around April as we get through the background process. But I can say that after a weekend of an open house, we received something like 50 applications. And so there, we have seen benefit. We're just not sure how that will translate through the background process and things like that. So hopefully come April, I'll have better news for you there. We are exploring retention and lateral hiring bonuses so that we can, get people in who already have experience and try to get them through the door. We just did, for example, an interview today of someone from the Department of Corrections who is interested in coming here, and that would be amazing. We are co-locating someone from Human Resources into the Sheriff's Office 1 day a week to solely focus on the increase in applications and interest that we are receiving from the community. And really beautiful program. We have started talking to all of our local chiefs, to include Chief McAlpine, about folks who maybe aren't being hired through their hiring process because maybe they don't have enough experience, life experience, might not be ready to work patrol, or who have not been successful in their training program for things that might make them really beneficial over in the jail. So, for instance, if someone wasn't succeeding in patrol because of geography or something like that, but they had great character, they might have a great opportunity to start working in the jail, gain some of that experience, and then come back to a patrol position. And everyone has been willing, more than willing, because this is it's an entire county concern, right, for this public safety, more than willing to help us with that. And we have variable hour jail deputies that have agreed to come on and basically work on a part-time basis. And so we're hiring them as well. Next slide, please.
I'll talk a little bit about this next slide. The big question everyone has is, when are you going to start reopening the jail and accepting all the custodies and opening the pods up? And so our worked with our analysts that we have to kind of evaluate what that looks like. The jail is a very busy place. We're very short people, and so thank you. So when we put this together, we kind of evaluated what that workload is and what it looks like. The first step is to evaluate when we can increase the booking limits again and start to open that back up. That is depending on us getting a little bit more people, just because the booking area really is the lead of the jail. If the booking area is big, it is busy, everything else in the jail kind of slows down. So as we get a little bit more staff, maybe halfway between where we're at and 102, we can really look at reevaluating that booking criteria and opening up so that we have staff to respond to emergencies and do all those other duties. That 102 to 107 is an estimate based on the workload and about 6 to 10% overtime. Our overtime is astronomical right now. We know we'll always have overtime, but that 102 to 107 is just, it's kind of a line in the sand, a little bit of fuzzy math on that just to figure out where we're at, but we're evaluating this every month to look at where we are staffing, where our workload is, how many hours we have pod closures, posts go unfilled, that graph that shows, you know, what we have that come in on duty, and then with the forced overtime where that meets. And as those things start to come together and those lines meet up, we'll start looking at reopening some of those pods. But I really can't give you an exact number because it just doesn't work that way anymore, the way the jail is built. I can tell you, if we hire a deputy today and get them in our in-house, we have an in-house academy starting January 8th. They'll go through a 9-week in-house academy, a 6-week corrections academy then down at DPSST, and then they go through the FTEP program, which I think is 6 weeks per coach, and they go through 3 different coaches, and they go through a checkout. So when all is said and done, it's just under a year before they're able to be on their own and work. And so, you know, if you start to do the math, this is probably a couple of years before we're really going to get the staffing up at minimum to start reopening those pods. And I think that's a realistic number. The things that we're doing, increasing retention for our staff. Part of it is right-sizing the jail and also increasing our recruitment so that we have less people going out and more people coming in to help lower that time frame as best we can. But at this point, that's the best we can say is when we hit 102 to 107, we'll open a first pod. Because there's so much work, we need to sort of build those numbers up to help make sure we don't get in the situation again where we start working our deputies so hard that they start getting burned out and we're having to rush to cover pods. At that point, it will take just very few more to open up that second pod because it takes about eight deputies, 6 to 8 deputies to open up a pod when you figure out what our shift relief factor is. And so that can bump us up a little bit. And then sort of that same ratio of just a few more, 6 to 8 to 10 more, then we can open up that third pod. And so that's what that map is. And then just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at, in 2020 for the spring shift bid, so every 6 months we have a shift bid where the deputies decide what shift and what days off they want. We had 95 bidding. This latest shift bid in the fall of 2023, we had 74. Our next shift bid is in March, and as of right now, we have 70. And so it keeps getting smaller and smaller, and that's, again, why we had to right-size the jail for the staff we have. And that concludes the presentation.
What questions can we answer? There's a lot,
thank you. Yeah.
hopefully.
Counselors, any questions? Go ahead.
Actually, Council President Hu, I'll defer to you because I think you had some questions about Measure 110.
It's fine. We can all ask the same questions.
Well, but I think you were going to address that, and I just wanted to make sure that we had that conversation.
Yeah,
I think it's
and
critical.
I think started by our chief about Measure 110, and
Yes.
I'm just curious about, you know, there's discussion on different reform to Measure 110. I'm just wondering your opinion, what would be the, you know, possible outcome if we have different kind of reform? And
Well, thank you for that. I'm engaging in those discussions about the reform, and I do think that we're going to have to do something to have some accountability. One thing that is clear is that some people don't seek treatment until it's mandated, until they are charged, they're brought into custody, they're adjudicated, and then it's mandated. And sometimes it takes that for people to really wake up and go, I really need treatment. And sometimes it takes that happening several times before they're successful with treatment. And so we understand that any kind of reform is likely going to include increased accountability, which is good. And we are going to have to be flexible with what we do there. We are looking at different diversion opportunities, like prior to booking, to get people into some sort of facility. But we're going to have to take people even initially to get them booked and through and released. We're part of that Measure 110 reform discussion is also a sort of, really making sure we're utilizing our different courts, like drug court and things like that, to help get people into treatment. So I don't have a solid answer of exactly what it will look like, other than we are all going to have to be nimble and flexible because something is going to have to change.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And that's really a dilemma that we're all facing, right? We don't really want to criminalize everybody who use drugs, but at the same time, we do need them to take some accountability, right? So, yeah, so what a concern is that if we just recriminalize everything, we already heard from our business community that, it seems like our PD officer pick up somebody and moments later they're back.
Yes.
And I was told, not by anybody at PD or anybody at city, that, that's because of jail capacity. We have to be selective, like you said, of who we can book. And it sounds like it's not a secret, right? It's it's an open knowledge. So yeah, so I do appreciate, based on your presentation, the hard work you're putting into this, and I just want to thank you so much. We're out of time, so I really want to thank you so much for being here, and thank you for wanting to run for sheriff. So given our challenge, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. All right, so next item on our agenda is consideration of the resolution in support of ending the sale of flavored tobacco product, and City Manager Reimer will introduce the item.
Thank you, Council President. I'll keep it brief, just due to the hour. As you know, the council was asked to support this resolution that's in front of you by Tigard Turns the Tide. Recently, the TTSD school board supported it, and it's part of more of a regional conversation. It's been referenced a couple times already this evening. So we had this on the agenda, and then thanks to you for some of the efforts that you put in personally on the resolution itself. Those documents are attached tonight for your consideration, and I'll turn it over to you to facilitate a conversation.
Thank you, City Manager Reimer. So, it's up for conversation. So anybody want to start? Why don't we start with Youth Councilor Vogel? What's your opinion on this?
Well, I really appreciate hearing both sides and just looking over this information and just looking at that from a youth perspective and how that really does affect the community I involve myself with. And I think that it's hard. It's a loaded question. I feel like I want to feel like I make an educated answer on this, and I feel like in that I can see the reasoning in supporting the restriction of it. I see the logic, and I would, feel like doing what's best for where I stand on this as somebody who this is kind of affecting. And I think that I see that, but I would love to hear other people as well, and just.
Councilor Wolf?
First, Rebecca, I really appreciate your public comment and your letters and sharing your personal experience. Having said that, I do think this is a decision that our legislators will get to make, and from advocacy and support as a school board member for 12 years and seeing the challenges with that, I support the city showing its support to the district. And so I will vote in favor, but I also understand, as Youth Councilor Vogel shared, and I think Rebecca makes a lot of strong points, but I think it's my background will lean towards supporting the resolution as it stands.
Thank you. Councilor Shaw?
Great, thank you so much, and appreciate both Youth Vogel's opinion and Councilor Wolf's opinion, and also thank you, Rebecca Goodhouse, for attending tonight. I'm a little concerned. I don't think we've heard from both sides. I think we're looking at banning products for adults that adults can potentially purchase, and instead of looking at mitigation for youth who might be purchasing it illegally. We sat through an hour presentation of how the jail is already crowded, so this would be one more potential avenue for our jails to continue to be crowded. I do recognize that it's a legislative issue, so this is a resolution. So I'd be willing to support it in recognition that I would think that our business community, our educational community, and our chambers would have that conversation at the state level. But those would be my concern, because I think the presentation we've heard is really one-sided, but I do also very much appreciate our council president's citations that you provided. I did read each and every one of those, so thank you very much. But those are just my concerns.
Thank you. Councilor Singh?
Yeah, thank you. I think for me it's a no-brainer. I fully support this resolution and really don't have much further comment.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, I do appreciate Rebecca's comments coming here and all your perspective. And I just want to also point out that from FDA's perspective, for those who don't know, I'm a lawyer who practices food and drug regulations. I don't work on tobacco regulation, but I'm familiar with it. Right now, the FDA pretty much banned all the flavor product except menthol, and they are in the process of banning them. And so pretty much FDA will ban the sale of flavor tobacco nationwide. So, but the FDA is facing challenges because, as Rebecca pointed out, there are black market product coming in through China and other countries all the time, and FDA does not have enough enforcement. So they do rely on state partners for enforcement, but right now, since state doesn't ban it, our inspectors don't prohibit those flavor products. So that's a loophole that the FDA cannot close without state help. And so for me, I support it just based on the reading that I've done about how flavor product is pretty much a gateway drug product for, maybe that's not a good analogy, but it's a gateway product for young people to try tobacco, because studies have shown that just because it's flavor and it's vape, young people mistakenly think that it's not as harmful as regular tobacco, but in fact it could be very harmful because of the nicotine in there. So for me, just because of that, I do think that we need to ban it just to protect our kids from get hooked on the tobacco product. And to your point of jail being overcapacitated, I don't think anybody who caught selling it illegally will be sent to jail. I think that's more of a fine regulation thing. So, but anyway, anybody have any further comments or questions?
I appreciate that. And perhaps if it was a stronger legal issue, they would be sent to jail and we wouldn't be seeing these drugs sold to minors.
I know, right now, my understanding is just fine.
But that's out of our purview.
I know.
And I appreciate your comments about the FDA too. That's good to know.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Councilor Wolf.
I move to approve resolution number 23-44.
I second.
So the motion has been moved and second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so seeing none, will the Deputy City Recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution number 23-44, a resolution in support of ending the sale of flavored tobacco products.
Thank you. Will the youth councilor give an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. None. So the motion to approve resolution number 23-44 is adopted by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Thank you. All right, so next item on our agenda is public hearing, DCA 2023-0002, require FEMA NFIP regulatory updates. Yeah, so I'm going to open the hearing. So anybody who wish to testify on this public hearing by phone, video, in person, if you want to do by phone, please call in now at 503-966-4101, and Senior Planner Lindor will give the staff report. Good evening.
Good evening, Councilor President Hu and fellow council members. My name is Agnes Lindor. I'm a senior planner in the Community Development Department, and tonight's hearing is the FEMA National Flood Insurance Regulatory Update. Next slide, please. So the amendments before you tonight there's three components. The first one is a new municipal code, chapter 910, that contains the definitions, applicability, general provisions, the national flood insurance standards, as well as the violation procedures. There's also updates to the definitions chapter, which is 1830, and updates to the sensitive lands chapter 18510 that removes the procedural requirements and general standards to the new Title IX. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little background, the National Flood Insurance Program was established in 1968 through the National Flood Insurance Act. It allows property owners who have property within the area of special flood hazard to obtain federally backed insurance. It also identifies and maps the nation's floodplains, and those are known as the flood insurance rate maps, the FIRM maps. And these maps are used to determine local regulations, as well as if insurance is required and what that rate of the insurance is. Next slide, please. Because flood insurance boundaries aren't constant, FEMA periodically updates the maps as well as the regulations as part of the National Flood Insurance Update. Local jurisdictions are required to adopt the maps as well as any required regulations in order to continue to participate in the flood insurance program. Tigard's last update was in 2018, where we adopted a new FIRM map as well as new regulations. Next slide, please. And most recently in 2021, the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development, which is DLCD, through the FEMA Community Assistance contact process, notified us that we were due for another audit. Through this audit, it was determined that we needed further amendments to our regulations in order to meet the minimum standards in the for the flood insurance program, which are the amendments that are before you tonight. Planning Commission held a public hearing on November 13th and unanimously voted to recommend approval of these amendments to City Council. Next slide, please. So again, the purpose for tonight's amendments is for Tigard to continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. And then these are the listed amendments here on the slide, which is Chapter 910, a new chapter in the Municipal Code, updates to the definitions Chapter 1830, as well as the Sensitive Lands Chapter 18510. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, Planning Commission recommends approval to City Council of the proposed amendments that are listed below. These include, again, Development Code as well as a new Municipal Code chapter. Thank you.
Good evening, Council President and City Councilors. I'm Tom McGuire, the Assistant Community Development Director. I'm going to just say a few brief words to try to keep it short, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and little bit more, fill in between the lines a little bit. We are, I would say, a bit frustrated because in 2017, Washington County worked with FEMA to update the firm rate maps, the FEMA maps. And at that time, we were asked to make some changes to the floodplain ordinance, and we did that and adopted that. The process that DLCD has an agreement with FEMA to implement some FEMA regulations, including, I guess now, conducting the audits of the cities and counties in the state. They audit the cities about every 5 years. We've done this in the past with FEMA. They come in, they look at our records. It's just to make sure that we're implementing it as it should be. We're not, allowing some things that we shouldn't be allowing. And I've been through at least one of these before. And this time around, we were surprised that they audited our entire floodplain code again. And then in working with them since 21, the entire team, staff here, and as well as the city attorney, we've been frustrated with working with DLCD and FEMA staff and have essentially been told you need to adopt FEMA's model ordinance. And because the attorneys with the federal government worked so hard to write that model ordinance the way it is, they didn't want anything changed. The one exception is we can go more restrictive than FEMA if we want to do that. So that's where we're at. And we had a floodplain code that was a bit more restrictive in residential areas in previous years. That hasn't changed. And overall, the code, even though it's moving into a new title, and it's been somewhat rewritten, the regulatory levels have not changed. So just wanted to provide you with that information.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the background information. All right, so now it's time for public testimony. Again, if you wish to provide public testimony by phone, the calling number is 503-966-4101. Deputy City Recorder Raimondo, do we have anybody sign up to testify?
Not at this time.
Okay. Network Administrator Vang, do we have anybody in line to testify either by phone or by video?
No, not at the moment.
All right, so no response needed. So I will close the public hearing. All right, let's go to the next page. Now it's time for council consideration of ordinance. Discussions, motions. Councilor Wolf.
Just a point of appreciation to both of you. Senior panel, Linder, thanks for answering my questions and invite me when I should come to the Planning Council. And Tom, thank you. And I appreciate the details that's shared with us and just the process that you've all had to experience or endure, whatever the appropriate word is. And with that, I move to approve ordinance number 2309.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so the motion has been moved and second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the Deputy City Recorder Raimondo please read the number and the title of the ordinance?
Ordinance number 23-09, an ordinance amending Tigard Community Development Code, chapters 18.30, definitions, and 18.510, sensitive lands, and adopting a new Title IX of the Tigard Municipal Code, areas of special flood hazard, to adopt updated floodplain regulations in order to maintain participation in the National Flood Insurance Program.
Thank you. Would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councillor Shah?
Yes.
Councillor Singh?
Yes.
Councillor Wolf?
Yes.
Council President Hu?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So ordinance number 23-09 has been adopted by a unanimous vote of the council present. Thank you. All right, so next item on our agenda is Downtown Parking Management Update. And we have redevelopment manager, project manager Sean Farrelly and Rick Williams of Rick Williams Consulting for the presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, Council President Hugh and members of the Tigard. Remotely, we have Rick Williams. Next slide. So tonight we'll take you through the key findings of the parking study that was just completed in August, review some of what the parking committee has been up to, and then some next steps. Next slide. So when we briefed you back in March 2023, we had given you overview of the parking study that was done in September 2021. At that time, council felt that the COVID pandemic had probably depressed some parking demand in the downtown, and directed staff to arrange for a new parking study. And so that's what we did. And as we get into some of these charts and graphs here, just wanted you to keep this in mind, how to measure parking performance. So there's a, starting from the top, if there's more than 85% of spaces taken, that is considered a constrained supply. That means finding a spot is really difficult. So then you need to really have some heavy-duty management studies. If you're in the 84 to 70%, that's kind of the ideal. That's an efficient use of all the parking. There's constant activity, but people can usually find a spot when they need to. Moving down, we get moderate demand, and then low demand, and that's are going to see a lot of green in the charts that we look at. When you have low demand, parking is easy to find somewhere. Maybe not in the exact spot that you want, but overall in the parking, there is easier to find. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So the parking study that was completed, we worked with the reconstituted parking committee, which has members of the Town Center Advisory Commission, the Tigard Transportation Advisory Commission, the Community Committee for Citizen Engagement and Community Engagement, that is, and members of downtown businesses. And we worked with them to identify two representative dates. And when you do a study like this can only be capture a point in time, or in this case, 2 points in time. And so we chose a weekday, Thursday, generally being thought as a busy weekday, and then also Saturday. And the Saturday, as a result of feedback from the committee, we did go to 8 p.m. rather than 7 p.m., finding that there was more nightlife happening in downtown Tigard than there has been in the past with our eating and drinking establishments. And so the another new variable when this was collected is that the Universal Plaza was opened, and the water feature was up and running. Next slide. So first we're going to talk about the on-street inventory, and this map here shows the study area, so that's outlined in black, and that shows where the on-street spaces are. So we have 263 spaces, and that's for downtown this side is considered fairly modest. We have large blocks in the downtown, as I've mentioned before, so that kind of cuts down the number of on-street parking spaces that you can get. The red dots indicate the 2-hour parking limits, so they're 63% of the spaces, on-street spaces have a 2-hour limit, and then 34% have no limit, and those are shown in gray. Next slide. So let's look at the weekday first. Their parking occupancies did increase from 2021, about 5%, and 8 out of the 9 hourly counts were higher in 2023 versus 2021. 2023 peak is at noon, and that compares to 2021 where the peak was at 5. But there does seem to be an upward trend in evening trips. But as you see, even in the peak hour, we're still in the low demand, the green zone. Next slide. Going to get into some more details. So, again, looking at the peak hour, only 54% is being used. That means there's 121 empty spaces during the peak hour. The average stay is 2 hours and 26 minutes. So there's a 16% violation rate. That's a slight increase from 2021. If we break it down looking at the 2-hour spots, those peak occupancies are 54%. The 2-hour parking spots tend to be on Main Street and Burnham where there is more demand. The average stay there is actually just under 2 hours, so that's good. That a lot of people are respecting the 2 hours, but we still have that 16% violation rate, which we'll need to address. Looking at the no-limit spaces, there is higher utilization of those. There's 67% are being used, and the average stay is 4.5 hours. So people are picking up on where there is a parking limit and where there isn't. It's likely that the people parking in those no-limit spaces are employees. Next slide. Getting even further into the details. So that all these on-street spaces, that means that 518 unique trips were registered. So 500 vehicles came to downtown and used the on-street parking system. Other people use the off-street system, of course. So turnover rate, it's at 4.1. Rick Williams has said that downtown should be aiming for 5, so each space should turn over 5 times, but that's getting close to 5. So 9% of the trips, people are staying for 5 hours plus. That's compared to only 6% in 2021. There's not as many cars moving between stalls trying to avoid enforcement. They may realize that there is very low to no enforcement going on right now. Next slide. So now we're going to look at Saturday. And this was surprising. We found that the average, compared to 2021, that occupancy was down, nearly 21% drop. So hard to figure that one out. Had been mentioned that maybe it was a hot day, but we looked at the records. It was in the low 90s in August. That is not particularly hot. If it was 100 degrees, then we might want to take a look at how that would have impacted people coming downtown. 2023, the peak is at 1 p.m., but still, at that peak hour, only 37% of spaces are being used. Next slide. So breaking down it again, for Saturdays, we find that the average stay is 2 hours and 48 minutes, so that's longer than weekdays. That's because currently we do not have parking restrictions on Saturdays. Weekdays only, Monday through Friday, when we have the 2-hour limit. So there's 102 empty stalls at the peak hour, so parking should be easy to find. And next slide. We're going to look at the off-street inventory. So in the study area, there are 67 parking lots with 2,132 stalls. That's a lot of parking. Only 4 of those sites are controlled by the city. That's the 2 small public parking lots on Tigard and Burnham. And then we include Public Works lot and the City Hall lot as kind of semi-public, in that the primary usage is for people who have business with the city or employees, but after hours, those spots can be made available to the general public. Next slide. So off-street, similar to the on-street, there was an increase in parking occupancies during the week, up about 5%. That's likely due to more employees working on site in 2023 compared to 2021. The peak hour is at noon and 42% being utilized. So that means 58% is not, or empty spaces. The pattern seems to be that there's a peak in the late morning and midday, and then it tapers off in the evening. You see when you get to 7 p.m., you're down to only 23% occupied. So again, parking demand on the off-street system is considered to be low. Next slide. So now we're going to focus on those two public lots. We have they're two small lots, but they are very popular. Tigard Street lot has 13 stalls, about 85% occupancy. People stand about 2 hours there. That's an efficient use of that parking spot. There is some violation happening there, people overstaying 2 hours. And then the Burnham lot is definitely considered constrained. Over 85% usage, people are staying 2 hours and 40, average stay is 2 hours and 41 minutes, and 40% are overstaying that 2 hour limit. So a lot of usage of those. Next slide. So I think, where people perceive there to be a parking problem, it's really in this one area that's shown in this blue ellipse. That's kind of where the heat is, and those are where some of our more popular businesses are located, so that makes sense. So about 4 of the 6 block faces that are considered constrained are in this location, and patrons might feel that it's difficult and inconvenient in that direct area. But then if you look outside of that area, there is a lot of availability. Similarly, the off-street has the same dynamic. The more popular off-street lots are located near that blue ellipse. Next slide. This just shows Saturday. Similarly, less demand. Only 1 of 22 block faces are constrained, and similarly, only 5 of the 58 off-street lots that were studied were constrained at the peak hour. So the report summarizes basically that, as I mentioned before, where the perceptions of parking are being difficult or inconvenient is in that kind of heat map area, that hot area where there's popular businesses. You look at the overall supply, there's an adequate supply. In the off-street system, there's over 1,000 empty stalls, even at the peak hour. So we really see there's opportunities to seek partnerships there between businesses and private owners. Moving forward, we got to look at enforcement, improve communication, and overall, the data was saying it's premature to assess the impact of the Universal Plaza on parking demand. Next slide. So, as I mentioned before, we're working with a parking committee. We've developed some guiding principles that'll help us make some decisions. This group has met 5 times. We reviewed the previous parking study and the current parking study. And our last meeting a couple weeks ago, they endorsed these principles. Next slide. I won't go through all of them in detail. They are in the AIS, but the guiding principles center around coordination between public and private entities, making sure the priority customer are the visitors and customers who come to downtown, finding some efficiency and balance between all of the different people who want to use the parking supply, having intuitive and high-quality signage to make it easy to find a parking space when you're looking for one, and then planning for the future as well, because parking demand changes, as we've seen as we've studied the parking over the past few years in the downtown. Next slide. Really summing up the guiding principles, we'd like to see the guiding principles and the ultimate recommendations. We'd like to see more vehicle turnover, so the visitors and customers can find a spot in that limited on-street supply. find some reasonable long-term parking opportunities for employees, quality signage that I mentioned, better use the existing off-street supply, ensuring compliance while remaining user-friendly, making decisions based on the guiding principles and good data, and then having ongoing stakeholder involvement and partnership. So the next slide and the next steps. To make a briefing to the TDA board and TCAC. We actually made that presentation to the TDA board last week, and they did indicate that they were going to, in their beginning of the year board meeting, they're going to consider how they can help us out with the shared parking agreements in downtown. We'll be working with the committee on the final recommendations, and that's likely to include getting enforcement contract in place to have some enforcement of our on-street system and our 2 off-street public lots. And then working with stakeholders on implementing a permit program and a shared parking program, communicating the plan in the public with the public about any changes that happen, and then regularly updating council, include any proposed municipal code updates. Next slide. So that's my presentation, and happy to answer any questions or discussion, and also we have Rick available to get to the more technical questions.
Thank you. Councilors, any question? Go ahead, please.
Great, thank you. Very informative. Redevelopment Project Manager Sean Farley. Who sounds long to say that. But thank you, Sean. Great data. And also to Rick Williams, so I understand. Yes. Hi, Rick. Question for you. Curious, the date was August 24th on a Thursday and August 26th on a Saturday. Was there discussion of that being kind of a high peak summer vacation time, and why that date was chosen, and then why 2 then in the same week?
Well,
go ahead, son.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that we had heard that there'd likely be more demand before school went back into session in terms of usage of the Universal Plaza anyway, the water feature. We wanted to do a weekday, and Thursday was considered to be pretty representative, and then a Saturday as well. We considered Sunday to capture the farmers market. We brought that to the committee. They thought it would be better to do a Saturday because a lot of businesses are closed on Sunday, and also I had heard from the chamber that they hadn't had a lot of parking issues. There is a shared parking agreement in place with the farmers market, so that is definitely helping there. Rick, were you gonna maybe talk about why not consecutive days, but 2 days around the same time period?
Right, just for staffing and crewing, it was more efficient to do it that way, and the 2 dates that were selected were amenable to the committee. I think Sean summed it up. We were trying to, the key was visitor demand, and we knew that if school was back in session, that might affect that. So I think for efficiency, and I don't think we've done it in August before as well. So it changed the dates up as well.
So there's no perfect dates, but I think, when we do collect data in the future, we'll look at probably different time of the year, just to, not in the middle of winter, but maybe a good spring day or an earlier summer day, a couple of days, or maybe two
Sean,
days, different months, yes.
And Sean, if I might quickly add, that would be a recommendation that we would want the committee to put forward as well, is that future data collection begins to choose different days, different seasons. The 2021 and the 2018 data are really the baseline data that we have. Every time we collect data now, we want to change around and see if we can find hotspots or anomalies. So yes, the next time we collect data, we could choose different week of the month, different months, different seasons, and even different days. And again, the Universal Plaza is something I think we want to track over time.
Great, thank you. That's perfect explanation. And then I assume also the water feature, I know there were some hiccups. Assume by that time, if I recall, that it was up and running.
Yeah, we specifically wanted to wait till that was running smoothly. I think it had been up and running for about a month at that point in late August.
Anybody else? Yeah, thank you for bringing up the signage as a recommendation, because I just want to share the story again that, you know, I live in Tiger for 18 years, and a couple weeks ago is the first time I discovered there's a parking lot behind Cooper Mountain Ale, and I actually parked there. It's like, oh, okay. So signage definitely, I believe, is an important plays an important role, and in turn. When we talk about good data, and I see Daniel, Mr. Thompson, still here, so he probably appreciate this. Are there more efficient way to collect data than just having, I assume right now, there's people with a clipboard there, standing there counting? Are there do we have the technology like putting a sensor somewhere and just measure automatically so we don't need people to be there so we can get more data?
Right.
Rick and I were just
That's
talking
a
about
great-
this, so I'll let you take that, Rick.
Oh, thank you. That's a great question, Counselor. Our recommendation over time is that you have an assortment of data collection techniques. A lot of larger cities use license plate recognition. They call it LPR systems. We're working with Leavenworth, Washington now. They have sensors in the street. The challenges of the technology is the capacity of the owner, which would be the city, to keep up with it, manage it, analyze it, and use it. And we found that in smaller cities in particular, and we've done LPR before and worked with cities with sensors, is that it's actually expensive to get started, very expensive, than a person with a clipboard. And it's also, again, it becomes there needs to be an understanding of the administrative responsibilities because it's collecting so much data and diving into the data and keeping up with it. We found that that's been difficult for smaller cities. And then with some of the technology like LPR and even the sensors, they can have an error rate of up to between 10 and 20%. Leavenworth right now with their sensors in the street have a 20% error rate. They get dirty, some go down, and you don't know it until later. They have snow issues. LPR systems have trouble sometimes on corners, different fonts in license plates. So we like it all. We think this is a good start because with a clipboard, the error rate is very low because they're seeing every license plate as they go by and they're collecting that license plate number and they're counting physically every car, whether it's dark, light, or corners or whatever. So the long answer, Counselor, is the more data, the better. The combination of data to get you the data you need comes with some strings attached. But we would, we feel we can work with you on that if that's something you want. But I think at the baseline level, we really like to have people in the street so they can see what's happening. We can go into the dark because sometimes LPR systems don't work well in the dark. So I hope that answers your question. We don't want to downplay any type of technology, but right now this is the most cost-effective way to collect it. Although the limitation is you can just do it at 1 and 2 or 3 days at a time. So you have to build an ongoing database with the type of manual data collection that we've done to date.
Thank you. And I understand the limitation and privacy, even privacy concern. Maybe I'm just, not knowing enough about this technology, but I'm just thinking, not even reading the license plate, but just simply counting how many cars in a given position for how long. So,
yeah.
But anyway, you're the expert, but I just have reservation and concern about collecting data from 2 days a year, and how, the decision that council may need to make based on those two data point, I just don't know how accurate or how you know that how effective our decision will be based on two data points. So that's my concern. So thank you for answering that question.
Absolutely.
Anything else? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have non-agenda items, and we don't have executive session. So is there a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Yay.
Yay. Oops.
Yay.
Yay. All those opposed say nay. All right. The motion is adopted by a unanimous vote of the council present. All right. Good night, Tiger.